Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today is episode 2 of our Fortify 365 webinar series. My name is Eric Taylor. I am the Chief Forensic Operator here at Barricade Cyber Solutions, and I am the one that's going to be taking you through this thing. Today is the Azure Active Directory, or what's being called now Entra ID, depending on who you talk to. So we are going to go through the tenant properties and branding. We're going to talk a little bit about user sync and hybrid join, the enterprise app control, learning the identity protection, and setting up some alerting. Very, very key. You want to be able to alert this stuff and looking at your device policies. And again, at the end, we are going to do our Q&A. Before we get into the 365 tenant, there's a lot of subscriptions out there, right? We're not going to be able to cater this course for every type of subscription that's out there. So in our tenant and in this test tenant, we are using the Microsoft 365 E5 license. With that said, your tenant may not be able to do some of the things that we are doing. Having that information as the preset, let's dive in. If you weren't here for the last one and you're new to this is the Microsoft Admin Center. Where you control all of your users. You can be able to go into all your different portals. Again, go back into the first one, and we do a lot more of a generalized setting. We want to verify all of our tenant properties. And this is going to kind of couple on a little bit of the stuff that we did yesterday, but there's a couple other little portals that we just want to make sure that we have done. And a direct link to that is there. As we talked about last time, you setting up your business and everything like that, you may want to access this as well, just to make sure everything is lining. A lot of the times 365 does not sync into the various portals. In session 1, we also talked about tying in all of your DNS records and things of that nature. We showed that we are using Cloudflare for this particular instance. We even set in the portal in the admin center for setup. I'll kind of show that one more time here. Right, so we got the Fortify 365 as this one here. We got all of our DNS records that are in here. Everything looks good. Everything is healthy even to this time. In the Entra Admin Center, we're going to want to just make sure that our primary domain that we are using is verified over here, and it is marked as primary. Okay, again, a little bit of checks and balances, nothing too crazy. So here's the Microsoft documentation for configuring Microsoft Entra Hybrid Join. Okay, a little bit of background on hybrid joining devices. This is specifically around having on-premise domain controller. You got domain controller, you got Active Directory, and you're syncing everything there, right? You're going to want to make sure that your users are doing password syncing, which we'll dive into a little bit, user authentication, things of that nature, and making sure that things are working the way that you want them to work. If you haven't done it and you're looking to do it, definitely take a look at this article that I dropped in there. It'll walk you through how to configure, set up, in our specific situation that was going to go to, if it was warranted. We have our local domain doing split DNS, so the domain name is the same as a fully qualified domain name and things of that nature. So we were going to go through that, but this article is by far the best one going through all that. So you can link all of your domains and tie them to where you need them to and everything like that. And it just really, really works. So after you have everything joined and that is syncing the way you want to, you really want to go into and make sure we have pass-through synchronization working the way that it is. And a lot of this stuff is going into, these are all PowerShell commands. You're going to connect, but we're going to want to focus on pass-through authentication. This is really the crutch of pass-through authentication, and to really make things very, very easy for your users, okay? And quite frankly, for you as being the IT administrator or systems administrator of your 365 tenancy. Your user, they want to log in either through a cloud application, their computer, whatever it is. they're going to tie into the Microsoft Azure Active Directory. You see how even Azure Active Directory is still here, and over here everything's Entra. Like I said, sorry, side comment. This ties it. This is your central authentication, right? So much like your on-premise domain controller was before your central trust of source when it came to user management, authentication, things of that nature. This is now moved in your hybrid environment to the Azure Active Directory. Your local server will treat the Azure AD or Entra ID as the final authority for anything and everything related. The main purpose is that is the authority, right? And that's where you're going to look at for all of your SSO items. So let's say hypothetically you use Salesforce, or you're using Dropbox or Box or whatever third-party application that's out there. You're going to want to try to get simplified user management through SSO or single sign-on to show that it is the same username and password, and it helps minimize all that type of stuff. There is that communication tool that is syncing down into your local Active Directory. And in this particular situation, the pass-through authentication agent is a application called Azure Sync. I think they call it Azure Connect now. But that is a software that is beaconing between Azure Active Directory and your on-premise. Most people install that into your local domain controller, so that way you could be able to do what you need to do very, very easily versus standing up another VM, right? So this, of course, as you see here, it does sync, and it kind of sync. Does everybody understand where I'm going with that? In here, the Microsoft 365 SaaS, software as a service, and LOB, which is line of business applications, much like I was talking about a minute ago with 360, with like Box and Salesforce and whatever. These things are going to try, if you've got it configured, authenticate into the Azure Active Directory. Key thing when you're doing this, and we may harp on this a little bit later in one of the other following modules. When you go through SSO, you're going to want to make break glass accounts that the passwords are just very, very secure. Like if you can make it like 32 character type of thing to store in your password manager, or have their password manager create. Once you have implemented SSO, you have your break glass account or accounts, depending on your compliancy framework requirement and or your risk tolerance. Me personally, I like to think of having at least 2 break glass accounts, if at all possible. When you're creating your break glass accounts, you can definitely use that as part of your Azure AD Sync. Just be careful with it. We've seen problems in the past with certain characters being put in for the username, and Azure AD or Azure Sync does not want to sync it. It'll throw an error. So you change the password and the writeback won't work. But where I was going is, once you have SSO, you have your break glass account. See if there's a way to enforce those users not to be able to use legacy methods, SMS, email, TOTP codes. Like you've taken the time to structure that so much that we don't want everything to be circumvented. And a lot of applications won't let you do that. Like, yay, we've pushed out YubiKeys. Everybody's using the YubiKey. Yay! Uber secure. Too bad. It still allows you to request a TOTP code, and most portals will just let you brute force them. So disabling those legacy authentications is very, very, very important. And I believe that actually goes back a little bit into module 1. So I want to share these resources to make sure those who are not using it know of a good place to go get this material and be able to get things going. So company branding, setting up your default sign-in experience. Yeah, let me actually copy some of our branding, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like real quick. background. Yeah, that works. And you can go through your sign-in form. Let's see. In the basics, you'll do, you'll upload your logo, you'll upload your fave icon, which is, those who don't know, is that like little icon that's up there. Your layout, you can completely customize this, partial screen background. I see a lot of organizations going to partial screen background. This is the custom CSS file where we'll talk about this, but we're coming up with a man-in-the-middle detection platform. That way it will actually put that in there and you'll be good to go and be able to see that. Again, header logo, if this is what you want to put in, everything in here is so customizable, right? Your display text for your cookies, your URL, your terms of use, your sign-in form. You can add your banner logo. The sky is the limit, right? You can do all kinds of stuff just to make a user experience for your team just awesome, right? And even allow self-password reset. I know we're going to go into that in another module. I don't think that's part of this one. Let me actually re-enable that. Let's see if it'll let me do that with that fave icon. Yeah, it's gonna. But it should have let me. Okay, cool. I just didn't save that. Perfect. We come into in private. Sometimes this works right away. Sometimes it does not. Like we said in module 1, you're waiting on all of 365 to populate. Okay, it didn't yet. So yep, the traditional way to Microsoft Minute. I'll circle back to that toward the end. Customize your browser languages. If you want to enforce your browser to have your fave icon, any of your background images in your browsers, this only works with Microsoft Edge. Okay. Because Edge is the Chromium package that's built out to support everything. So again, so much customization in both portals. In here, next, user features. Very, very important. We're going to go through all that. This is one that you just want to double check just to make sure that both of these, the administrators can access My Staff and the users can preview features in the My Apps thing. This is part of the legacy Microsoft My Store account. But definitely go in here, take a look just to make sure it is selected to none. You can, of course, do which groups you want, which users can preview the apps in the legacy My Apps. And I've seen the old Microsoft Store still not be updated for a lot of users. So mileage may vary. Something to consider pushing out. Again, I really wish this portal would just go away because I think by the majority of everybody in 365, it's been about a year now, I think, since the new Microsoft Store app has been released. So this thing is on its way out. It really should be deprecated, not even accessible. So go in there, take a look at that before we go in here and start jacking with users being able to prevent app registration. Now, let me stop screen share for 1 second and have a serious talk with you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, seriously, all jokes aside, 99%, that may be a little high, north of 90% of most business email compromises is because a user wanted to do some sort of feature in their email and thought that this really cool tool that they saw online would allow them to do this said feature. Now, let's say I was talking about it on a podcast yesterday about going through Outlook myself and learning about some new features. I just kind of ignored them. Like, oh, that's actually a pretty cool feature. Let's just say hypothetically you found an app to help you organize your inbox better. Okay. People don't read the permissions on these apps. Those who've been around for a while know exactly what I'm talking about. Like some of them will literally try to get global admin access to the freaking tenant. We'll just say shipping department, because I know several of the people here are in manufacturing. It may not matter that Susie wants to integrate some sort of app into her email because she doesn't do anything sensitive. All right. But take a look at the users that are integrating, like, yeah, you have way too much PII that flows in and out of your email box and that you have permissions to. You're not doing it. Me personally, I strongly recommend not allowing a user to install an app at all without explicit permissions. And that's kind of what we'll go into. So this is the part that we want to really go in here and really just say, nope, you guys are not doing it. We do not want users to register their own applications. It says indicates whether the default user can create applications. And what they're talking about here is if a user goes into, let's see, Entra, go away. All right. Manage. All right. All right. So app registrations, this is where they're talking about. Okay. So a user is giving access to certain features, their email box. In this tenant, you will start seeing every application that is allowed in the tenant from the user. Now, again, you may not care about this, but I strongly recommend considering not allowing users to register applications. We don't want inadvertent information leaving the organization, plain and simple. Restrict non-admin users from creating tenants. We definitely want to say yes. We don't need our users creating ad hoc freaking federated tenants. Believe me, we had a case with this. Like, how does a user do that? PowerShell. Users can create security groups. Again, we don't want general users to gain access and be able to change anything all willy-nilly, and we're playing the Where's Waldo game. So this is what we recommend. Users can create applications, registered applications, no. Restrict non-admin users from creating tenants. Absolutely. Users can create security groups. No. When we come down here to this a little bit outside of the shell, but guest users, how much permission do you really want to be able to access data? We try to say, guest users are restricted to properties and memberships of its own directory objects, which is most restricted. It's like, okay, what exactly does that mean? It's when you're granting access to an external domain, external user's domain, let's just say Bob at bobsprockets.com. 5 points if you understand that reference. You want to limit their availability into, let's say, a team SharePoint folder. You're sharing stuff, collabing, things of that nature. You want to try to put the biggest bubble as you can. And when we actually go through, I think it's module 4 or 5, we'll talk about making sure that external guest users through conditional access policies are required to do MFA to authenticate before they can come in, right? Again, we just want to be really, really careful about our data that's in the 365 tenancy and what we're sharing out and who has access to it, right? Believe it or not, you can walk up to any of your general users who have no rights at all, right? So we can literally go in here and I'll open up an incognito window here in one moment. I may need to stop sharing my screen just so, yeah, let me just do that real quick. All right, so Kimberly was here. When we come into, sorry. So you see here, no administrator access, right? Now, unless this has changed in the past 15 days, users can still do this. Entra.microsoft.com. We are in an in-private window. Again, picking on Miss Kim. Because once again, Kimberly, she was here. Oh, it's actually showing now. See that? Yay! All right, so just had to wait that Microsoft minute. And again, like I said, we've got to test this thing, but having that over to the side, I don't think the man in the middle attacks mimic that right now. They just pull a lot of the branding image and stuff like that. So just to prove a point, Kimberly was here, and now she's here in our Entra ID or in our Entra portal. A general user can come in here and look at users. Right? Can she come in here and reset my password? This was a vulnerability not too long ago. They're supposed to fix this. Again, this was available 15 days ago. Okay, so they did fix that. Okay, perfect. Woo. But yeah, there was a vulnerability in the 365 tenant. You've seen how long it took to do that. You know, the general users were allowed to do that. I mean, a general user can come in here and look at app registrations, what's in their applications and everything like that. We don't want general users getting into this freaking portal. So I wanted to showcase that. So restrict access to the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. Yes, please. All right. LinkedIn account connections. Microsoft owns LinkedIn now. And if you want to allow your 365 users to be able to sync and do everything for their sales team and for collaboration and just making things life easier for LinkedIn, there's no real security issues that I've found that I've ever seen on any of my CTI feeds or anything like that. It's all owned under the same organization. So I don't see a whole lot of real risk for that. External users, manage your external collaboration settings. This is very, very important. You're going to want to go through these things and figure out, kind of what's going on, right? Again, I personally say grant users restrictive to be restrictive to that bucket. A lot of organizations do not allow external collaborators inside of the 365 tenant at all. A lot of municipalities, a lot of government entities, things of that nature. So like you're going to need to use a third-party tool to exfil the data from your tenant to that portal for external collaboration. Not a bad way to go. This is really where a business and security have to meet. All right. So again, no one in the organization can invite guests, users, including admins. A lot of organizations that we do a lot of our consulting with, they will do no only users assigned specific admin roles can invite guest users. So you do have that escalation assessment. So like if a user wants to, share out some files, they've got to go up. You want to make sure that you have, who's allowed to do this and who is not, right? So this is typically where a lot of our clients leave stuff. Now, if you want to get real restrictive, again, the cross collaboration is very, very nice. I do like this one that got added a couple years ago, probably about 3 years ago now, where allow invitations to be sent to any domain, which is like, hey, Bob's your uncle. If you met up to the admin role to invite users, then they should be able to do this. Or you can do like invite to everybody, but we know we don't want to share with blah, blah, blah. Like we're in a legal dispute. We want to make sure nothing gets leaked out to them. Or the most restrictive is, okay, we're going to share, but we have a handful of people that we really, really trust, and we're only sharing crap with them, right? So consider that for your sharing collaboration. It will save your bacon a lot when you're doing this type of stuff. Because there's been a lot of times that people have unfortunately had information leaks out because of improper settings. Let's just say hypothetically, a user was able to go into their Entra ID, create an application to share out data, and just started sharing everything out. Again, a minute ago, I just showed you where they can get into the portal. We're going to move on. Right now, one of the biggest parts that normally, so if you made it this far in our process of phase one, typically we have a call with the interested parties to say, okay, we are going to show you the reports and, kind of walk them through what kind of reports we need to get. So we're going to be creating weekly identity protection digest email report, right? So in this one, Microsoft will send you a really goofy report. And I wish I had something sanitized. So you definitely want to do this and have all the people that we need to have added to the report, right? So this kind of gets into a little bit of a gray or a sticky area. Okay, so I want to pay close attention. Users who are global admins, security administrators, or security reader roles are automatically enlisted into this report. But as you can see here, it doesn't give you a pretty PDF or anything like that. There's no way just to enroll somebody who is not on any of those groups. What we have seen is administrators giving people that need to get this report a security reader role, so that way they get included without any of the freaking permissions, right? So consider that, but make sure that your weekly digest is set to yes. Newer tenants that are created are defaulted to yes. We come across it all the time in our engagements when we're doing these things where the older tenants are set to no. Just make sure people who need to see the identity reports are getting it. Enterprise state roaming. When you went from workstation B, you went to workstation Q. It would take you a while, but all of your settings would migrate or populate, I should say, over on that workstation Q from workstation B that you're on. This is that. So enterprise state roaming is when you are going from your work computer to your work laptop to whatever settings that you have for mobile, like all of your stuff. If you set it in one place, it's going to transfer all over the place. It's like a massive robocopy, right? This one does require Entra ID Premium. Oh yeah, it even says there. Entra ID Premium for that feature to go into effect. And this is not around. This is not force OneDrive sync or any of that other stuff, right? This is just around your profile, things of that nature, right? So it's definitely something you want to do, and it helps prevent drift. So you can always do it. What we always talk about is doing selected, choosing your champions, test it out with them, make sure there's no problem before deploying it organization wide. In all the tenants that we've set up, we've seen 3 situations where it's gone awry, and something for you to consider. A lot of times organizations will have team members wearing multiple hats doing multiple things, aka you have an HR person who also does finance, and they literally have 2 computers in their office. One, and this is like their definition of segregation of data, their finance computer and their HR computer, right? And they got settings, they got their everything configured just right for when they log into HR. They've got all their profiles set up the right way and everything to perform HR function. Same thing with payroll, like OCD. Turning this on will brick that for them. So just be careful, please. One of the other biggest things we see with a lot of BEC cases is, come on, This is a very, very big one. Have y'all ever been in a situation where a user comes to you and says, hey, we've got something crazy going on, and I've got unknown devices connected to my user. Like, I'm all Apple. I'm personally not. I mean, I use iPhone, but you know, they're an all Apple person. They drink the Apple Kool-Aid, so to speak. And for some reason, there's this rogue Samsung Galaxy device tied to their user profile. Well, this right here is going to help mitigate some of that. We're going to mandate that require MFA for a device to join Azure AD. This could be at Azure / Entra ID hybrid joined, only Entra ID joined, your cell phone, your tablet, whatever, for your device to authenticate against the Azure AD or Entra AD, Azure AD Entra ID. They must pass MFA, and that is right here. Require multi-factor authentication to register or join devices with Microsoft Entra. Now, registering a device is simply logging in. You can go to your public library, go to Microsoft or go to outlook.office.com, log in, and your device is registering with the 365 tenancy. Very, very, very important. Also, one key thing to do, maximum number of devices per user. Please, 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 for the love of Pete, change this. If you weren't here for part 1 of here, this is a brand new tenant, like less than a month old. You see how it's already at 50. Come on. I got to work on that refresh rate. Holy moly. Microsoft recommends 20. Why are we not at 20? I don't know. I personally recommend setting that thing to 5. Most people, I don't know, unless you are just super techie and you got so much stuff going on, I don't know, outside of a handful, maybe 2 people. Like, dude, even I've got 4. I got my desktop, I got my laptop, got a tablet, got a phone, and I got a backup laptop. I carry around a lot, right? Like my book bag is freaking insane. So max of 5 should be more than sufficient. Most people carry 2 or 3. Their work computer, their work laptop, and their work phone or their personal phone. Most people don't do that, right? So consider doing that. Next one is to assign local administrators. So global administrator role is added to local administrators of a device during the Microsoft Entra join. What does this mean? When your device is only getting registered to Entra ID, like you're fully registering that device. You're not hybrid. We're not talking about cell phones again, like we were just talking about with the MFA or anything like that. Your workstation, your laptop, your device is registering. We're going to want to make sure that Microsoft is pushing a local administrator to that device. Well, we're opening up the floodgate. We are a little bit, but no worries. This is the break glass account. If you need to gain access to that device, it can't authenticate. Hypothetically, we had several cases last year where we had to leverage the local administrator because to authenticate, because everything was Entra ID joined and the internet was shut off, like firewall, like unplug Ethernet from firewall shut off. The only way to authenticate was the local administrator. So this is that break glass account. Down here, enabling Entra ID local administrator password lap. We're going to want to set this, right? We're going to want Entra to rotate those passwords every so often. If you set up labs before in Microsoft 365, you had to upload the labs MSI. You had to do all this stuff. Well, now, I think as of 4 or 5 months ago, it's fully integrated into Entra ID. So you don't have to upload the MSI, 32, 64-bit, all these other things. You can go there, enable it, and you're starting to roll it out. One other key thing that we want to do is, if you're in that regulation, you're worried about users doing nefarious things, strongly consider enabling that. There's a lot of industries where it's a really good, strong case. Like, we don't want somebody breaking into our office, stealing our computers, and then trying to figure out a way to do data siphoning and mining of our data. All right, let's talk about your passwords for your users. The greatest topic of all times, ladies and gentlemen. All right. This is, again, out of the box passwords. Okay. Now, I don't agree with everything that Microsoft does by a long shot. That's kind of why we have Fortify 365, right? Lockout pass threshold. Those who don't know, this is your failed attempt lockout. Me personally, I don't think 10 is sufficient. Me personally, I think, you know what? If you do 4 or 3, maybe 5, you're locked out for a little bit. Then lockout duration, 60 seconds, a minute. I don't know. That's something that you have to consider. I cannot advise on a proper lockout duration. I can tell you that I believe that maybe 60 seconds is a little too short, maybe. I don't, the way that you got to figure, it's like, okay, there's two sides of this coin. The user locks himself out. It's a Monday morning. They're having a case of the Mondays. The coffee hasn't flit. They just need a moment to, like, oh yeah, my password was whatever. All right. I can see being a 60-second timeout as an acceptable thing. However, if your account is being brute forced, then we don't want threat actors being able to pick up their activities after 60 seconds. So again, you'll hear me say this a lot, and you'll probably get tired of me saying this, but cybersecurity and business operations have to meet in the middle somewhere, right? We can't go full Titan glove on everything. So make a consideration of what's going on, right? So Raymond Cruz brings up, likely depends on their role, but graduate the time for continued failures. That's a good point. However, if you can see here, there's no escalation process for 365. If failed in 3 times, lockout for 60. If 7 times, lockout for 5 minutes, whatever. I know that there's a lot of people who are screaming to have that escalation process, but it's just not there. So everybody is seeing a cybersecurity report of some shape or form, I'm sure, where they were able to get into XYZ application using winter 2024 ! Or whatever the case is. This is where you're going to set up those passwords. You're like, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. Stop it, Carl. We're not doing this. So what we typically do is we just go to Google, and we just say GitHub 1K common passwords, I believe is what it's called. Yeah, checklist. Okay, perfect. Let's try top 1,000. How about that? That looks like it's all over 4. So you get the point. Play around with it. All right, we'll just say no for now. But you get the idea, right? So enforce your custom list. Get a custom list. Put it in there. And if you are hybrid joined, please push this there, right? Put it in there. Make it populate down below, because if you've been running IT for a while, ban password lists in your local domain controller is a effing nightmare to enforce globally. Microsoft really has made this process really, really easy. I can tell you cannot take one of these very large data sets, like the 100K most commonly passwords. Microsoft's going to laugh at you right out the door. You're not going to be able to drop that in there. So you're going to have to get a little creative on, what you do, but still, you may want to do audit to see, what kind of weak passwords are being used. Unfortunately, this only goes around setting a password. If a user already has a weak password, this is not going to stop them from logging in with that weak password. So make sure you go in and do that, right? You go in and take care of the weak password stuff. Make sure people are resetting their passwords. Maybe one day a week, you pick 10 people and you start having people cycle their stuff out, right? We're going to talk about authentication methods. All right, so everybody sees this here, right? You see that? You see that down there? The You have your passkey, FIDO2. I showed this earlier. Your YubiKey, right? There's some other ones. I just happen to like Yubico. It's whatever. Microsoft Authenticator. I get a lot of hate about this one, but I do not think Microsoft Authenticator is a MFA. I think it's getting a little bit more now that you have to actually enter a code into it. But take a look at all these ones, right? Of course, in this tenant, YubiKey is not enabled. We haven't set that up. The Microsoft Authenticator is, yes, it is better than nothing. The SMS is, of course, text messaging, temporary access pass. All right. That is for people who have passkey FIDO2 enabled hardware token. You mitigated TOTP codes, you mitigated email, you removed all these other authentication codes. You want to make sure you have a temporary access pass because you're not going to give your users the password. That completely negates the whole reason of having hardware token. They don't remember a freaking password anymore. And it forces them to use that hardware token. So this is used for, especially when you're onboarding a new user, things of that nature, you're drop shipping stuff out there. You need to create a temporary access pass. It's a temporary password that the users can use for, 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever you think it is deemable, acceptable for that. Finish getting their new computer set up, helping them, getting remoted in and getting, the passkey set up. Hardware auth tokens. We will talk about this later, but this is something that's coming. Microsoft is putting out a hardware authentication. So in layman's terms, when you authenticate to 365 and you go through any of these methods, that session cookie that is being generated is hard coded to your device. Now, I'm not sure how it's doing that yet, but it's supposed to help mitigate the need or the ability to, use session tokens to log into your account after you've gone through it. It's it's in preview. So I think I did that already, but we'll see. Definitely don't have phone call. Definitely stop doing email TOTP code, certificate-based authentication. That is something, but that goes a whole long way. I mean, at that point, you might as well just freaking do the FIDO2 token, to be honest with you. And a QR code. Please don't let your users enroll with a QR code, please. I mean, unless they're really, really locked down and restricted. All right, so we're going to set up alert policies. Right, we're doing all this great stuff. We're locking down, we're making people be secure, and we got to set up alert policies. Basically you want to go through and say, we kind of walk our clients through this thing, right? So we typically start off with the highest severity. User click through a malicious link. You want to get alerted about that suspicious connector activity. That's a different topic, but you kind of go through, reply storm detected. These are things that are high severity, and we need to know about this thing sooner than later. So a lot of our organizations use like a pushover app or get notify or pushly or whatever, where you can send it to one place and it notifies a ton of people, and it's out of band communication. That way it's not part of your day-to-day operations, right? So we definitely consider that for part of your stuff. And with that, that's kind of it for today's webinar of Module 2. As you can tell, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot to it. And we're just scratching the surface, ladies and gentlemen. It is very, very intense. There is a lot of stuff to go through. And I do greatly appreciate it. If you ever found this stuff to be overwhelming and just like, this is just too much, go to Fortify 365. This is what we do all the time. With that, thank you so much for coming. I do greatly appreciate it. And we'll see y'all next time. Take care, y'all.